Hi, this is Joan-Marie Domino, and I have 7 awesome ornament ideas to share with you today. And I'm going to take you step by step. You're going to learn a whole bunch of different techniques. I'm going to give you my very best tips. So even if you're a beginner, you're going to be able to make ornaments like this right away. I've even included the fun paint crackle technique, and you're going to be able to do this easily as well. All my beautiful napkins are from Vippies Designs, www.vippies.com. This is one of the first beautiful napkins from Vippies Designs I'm going to use. And the first thing I'm going to do is put on a coat of Mod Podge. That's what I have in this container. I'm going to give you some tips because the method I'm going to show you first is what I call the dry glue method. I'm going to put the first coat on. I'm going to let it dry. Now I'm going to put the second coat on, but when I put the second coat on, I'm going to go in the opposite direction. I'm going to make sure that the egg is completely covered with Mod Podge. This beautiful napkin, the black ink printed on that soft cream, the print goes right across the entire napkin. Nothing is cut off, and this is the section that I'm going to use. Napkins come in several layers, also called plies, and we only use the top printed ply in decoupage. Once the napkin is where I want it, I'm putting a piece of baking parchment on top to protect the napkin and the iron. Yes, I'm using the iron-on method. When I run my iron over this, the glue is melting or reactivating, and it's going to adhere to the wood perfectly. Take a look at that. It's time to remove that extra napkin hanging off the edge, and I'm using what's called a finger sander. I'm using a downward stroke, and I'm going to go all the way around. It's going to remove the napkin perfectly, and the edge is going to be nice and clean. You can also use a nail file. All right, on to the next step. I want to enhance this egg by doing something around the edge. So this is my black stamp pad. I'm using Memories. You can use any pad that you have. And this is one of these little blending brushes. I love them. So what I'm going to do is go around the edge with the brush. I'm kind of doing, again, a downward stroke. And I'm going just a little bit on top of the napkin just to give it a little bit more dimension. You can add as little or as much of this as you want. I just usually kind of go around a few times and I look at it and then I'm like, oh, I like that. That's really pretty. All right, the decoupage part is over, and now I just have a couple more steps. So the first thing I want to do is put a little hanger on it. So I found this really pretty decorative ribbon in my stash. It has a little bit of lacing around the edge. Hot glue, it gets hot, so you want to put something on your hands to protect yourself from getting burnt. All right, another little finishing touch. I'm going to do hot glue again. This is a deep brown ribbon which goes with the black and the cream. I'm going to put that on first. Again, protect those fingers. And then I have this beautiful little paper flower, also a very soft cream color. And I'm going to put that right there on top of the bow. My first egg is done, and I showed you what I call the iron-on or dry glue method. I want to hold it up so that you can see. And there is the beautiful napkin that I used. Okay, I'm on to my next project, and I want to show you this beautiful napkin with the ballerinas in white. It's so unusual. I love it. Now, I'm going to give this egg a coat of white paint, and I'm doing that because the ballerinas are white. So once I put this napkin down on top of the egg, I want to make sure I can still see the ballerinas, and with another color, they may not be as vivid. White paint, that's a big tip. Okay, now I'm going to give it some time to dry. Here's another tip. I'm going to take the egg and I'm going to put it on top of the ballerina that I want to use to make sure that it fits. I'm going to separate this napkin. Again, we only use the top layer for decoupage. Now I'm doing what's called a soft deckled edge, where I use my water brush. Water comes out of the brush. I'm able to tear the napkin and it gives a nice edge on that. I don't want a defined edge, which I would get if I was using a scissor. So I drew a little line as to where the ballerina is going to go, because now I want to put on some gold rub and buff. I decided on gold because I felt that this ballerina napkin was very, very elegant. Now, Rub and Buff is a solvent paint, which means it's permanent, so you want to be really careful when you apply it because if you get it on your fingers, it is difficult to get off. So once I get it on, I am going to give it a little bit of time to dry. The gold is dry, and now I'm going to use Mod Podge and start to apply the napkin. So I laid it down, and I'm going to do half of it at a time. So I put the Mod Podge up on top. I'm flipping down the napkin. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. And take note that I'm actually going over the napkin with the Mod Podge. Mod Podge has sealant properties, so it's going to protect the napkin. All right, plastic wrap on top. Another big tip. I'm going to rub it down with a paper towel. It's going to adhere well, squeeze out any extra Mod Podge, and the napkin is going to adhere perfectly. I want to hold it up so that you can see. I love the deckled edge up against that gold paint. Here's my completed ornament with a beautiful ballerina, and I just showed you how you can use saran wrap or plastic wrap in decoupage. This is a cute little napkin, and I'm going to add more color on this ornament. So I'm going to start with this chalk paint. It's like a saffron color. I'm going to go over the entire egg. Now, because this egg is such a light color, a light colored wood, I'm only going to need one coat of this paint. And when I'm done, I want to give it some time to dry. I'm only going to use one part of a quarter of the napkin. So I'm going to go ahead and separate the napkin again. I just want to say that I did put glue on this, 2 coats, and it's dry because I'm going to do the iron-on method again, or dry glue method. Parchment goes down first to protect the napkin and the iron. The iron is hot. It's on its full hottest setting. I am using a Cricut iron. So the glue is melting and the napkin is going to adhere perfectly. Once again, I'm using my finger sander to remove that extra napkin, and I'm doing it in a downward stroke, and the edges are going to be very, very clean, and that bunny is just so cute. This is a metallic paint, and I'm actually going to use my finger this time. It's water-based, it's not permanent, so it's going to come right off. Now, this is going to give me more of a rough definition around the edge. I don't want anything too perfect, and by the way, if you haven't noticed, that color, that saffron paint, is peeking right underneath the white of the napkin. The decoupage part is done. Now I want to finish it off, and first I'm going to do is add a little hanger, which I'm doing with some hot glue and a piece of decorative ribbon. And remember, hot glue, it's hot, so make sure you put something on your fingers to protect yourself from getting burnt. Once that's cooled off, I'm going to flip it over. Now I'm using the same color ribbon, but this time I did it in a bow, and I'm going to put it right there up on top, make sure it's well adhered. Another paper flower that I love in a deeper burgundy color that I think complements the colors in this napkin, and that bunny is just so cute. And here it is next to the napkin. Although this beautiful napkin has a white background, I'm going to go ahead and paint the egg in a light blue color. This is just plain ordinary acrylic cheapo paint, as I like to say, and it's going to do a great job on top of the light wood. So I'm only going to need one coat, and I'm going to let it dry. Now that the paint is dry, I'm going to put on a coat of Mod Podge. That's what I have in this container. And I'm going to cover the entire egg with the Mod Podge. Remember, I go in 2 different directions to make sure I have good coverage. So I'm going to have a little bit of a twist in this video. I'm going to be using 2 different techniques. All right, I'm going to need 1/4 of the napkin. I'm going to remove the back plies. I'm going to put it down and make sure I have it in the right spot. I smooth it with my fingers a little bit, and there. Now I'm using plastic wrap, and I'm going over it. Have a wadded up piece of paper towel, make sure it's well adhered. I'm going to pull off the plastic wrap, and then I'm going to let it dry. Now that it's dry, I'm going to put a piece of parchment paper because, hey, I'm also going to do the iron-on method. This is a little quicker way to do it, but my one biggest tip is to make sure that the glue is dry before you do the iron. Make sure that the glue is not still wet. All right, I'm removing that extra napkin with my finger sander. I want a nice clean edge. Look at the red flowers up against that blue. It's like a spring sky. I love this color combination. I want to do a little bit more finishing touch, so I'm going to go back to my gold rub and buff, which I absolutely love, and I'm going to go around the edges. And just as a reminder, it's solvent based and it is permanent, so if you get it on your fingers, it is kind of difficult to get off. Now I'm going to give you another tip, which is what I should have done here. I'm using a paper towel, and really the rub and buff goes on much better if you use a piece of cloth or an old rag. All right, now you also want to give the rub and buff some time to dry, but again, I love the red up against the blue and that finishing touch of the gold. I'm using some thin red ribbon. I made the hanger with it. I made a little bow, and I put a faux pearl there on their self stick. I'm going to trim the ribbon up a little bit. This is very pretty. Love the red. I love the blue. I know I already said it, but the blue and the red. But you know what? I'm not done. I'm going to glitz this up a little bit more. So I'm using what's called extreme glitter paint, and I'm going to take a brush and I'm going to go over the entire napkin. I just don't know if you noticed, but you want to really shake this up well and roll it around to make sure that that glitter is well mixed. Now I know it looks a little bit white in spots, but that's going to dry clear. But I want to hold it up. You have to see this. Look at all of that glitter. I absolutely love it. The blue and the red. It's just stunning when they're put together and you add some glitter. There it is with the napkin. So I'm going to switch things up a little bit, and I'm going to do a little chick. And I'm also going to be using 2 napkins, both from Vippies Designs. This first napkin, which is burlap, I absolutely love. I have found it to be one of the most versatile napkins I have in my collection. All right, I have taken off the back ply, so this is the top ply only. I'm patting it down with my hand, but I'm also going to put a piece of plastic wrap on top. I love this technique. You can really smooth out that napkin. I'm going to remove the plastic wrap and I'm going to let it dry. Now that the glue is dry, I'm going to go over it with my iron, doing the iron-on method. Remember, that's a piece of parchment on top, and there you go. I'm going to use my finger sander, but I'm going to tell you, when you have something like this, you have to sand off the edge. You know, he's got little feathers and his little feet. You want to use something like a nail file. It just does a much quicker and better job. A question I get all the time is, can you put one napkin on top of the other? And yes, that's exactly what I'm doing here. You want to make sure that that bottom napkin is completely dry. Then you can put Mod Podge right on top of it and take the other napkin and lay it right on top of the bottom napkin. I am going to use plastic wrap, and I'm going to rub it down to make sure it's well adhered. And I want to hold this up so that you can see how beautiful it is, that rose napkin. And you can see the burlap printed napkin right through it. It's very subtle, but it's like a collage. It's so pretty. So yes, you can put one napkin on top of another. I want to do a little bit more finishing touches on this little chick as well. So I'm using brown chalk paint. It's nothing special, and I'm using a blender brush. And I'm just very roughly going along the edge of this little chick. I'm giving it a little bit of definition, and I think I'm giving it more of a vintage feel as well. With those 2 napkins together, doing something like this along the edge really complements the napkin. And there you go. I'm going to finish that off. I made a little messy bow. I'm going to put it up there on the chick. And then I took a piece of paper and I wrote the word peep, a little bit of hot glue, and I'm going to tuck it under that bow. And there you go. I love it. It's so vintage. Those 2 napkins together, they're so pretty. Look at that burlap and those roses. And there's the 2 napkins that I used. I love both of them, especially together. I'm using a lot of color in this video because we don't always have to paint the base color white. All right, this is a beautiful aqua blue chalk paint. I love it. This is one of those colors that you can also use for nautical beachy things. Like, you should have it in your paint collection. All right, so here's Mod Podge, and I'm going to put on my first coat, and you see I'm doing it in a vertical, up and down. I'm going to let it dry, and my second coat is going to be horizontal. You want to make sure you have good coverage of the egg, and I'm going to let it dry. Now that it's dry, I want to get my napkin ready. I'm only going to need 1 square of the napkin. And again, I'm going to separate the plies because remember, with decoupage, we only use that top printed ply because as you can see, it's very, very sheer. And when I place it down on top of the egg, you're going to see how that blue peeks right behind that bunny. All right, we're doing the iron-on method. Piece of parchment, hot iron, glue is melting, and that napkin is adhering perfectly. And once again, I'm using my finger sander, and as you can see, I do use it a lot. I think it's one of those tools you really need to have in with your crafting supplies. So how do you like that aqua blue behind the bunny? They complement each other so much. Now, I decided I want to do something a little more collagey with this because I do have some space around the bunny and I want to make it look like he's hiding in a flower garden. So I just tore off a few pieces of the napkin. They were the extras from around the bunny, and I put one behind him and one next to his cute little face. I'm just applying it with Mod Podge, and I'm going to let it dry. Once it's dry, I'm going to remove the edges of those napkins as well. And now I'm going to do the edge. I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. This is regular paint, and I'm using a small sponge pouncer. Look how cute it is. And I'm going to go all the way around the edge, and it's going to give it some nice definition and a finishing touch. And once I go all the way around, I'm going to put it off to dry. Oh, I love that extra flowers. It really does make him look like he's hanging out in a garden. I'm going to put a little bit of hot glue at the top, and this is on the other side, the back side. And again, we want to be careful. You probably heard me say it 100 times, but I'm going to say it again. Safety first. I decided to add a little bit more florals to the front. I love it. It kind of gives it a 3D look. So I went through my bag of florals. I have I'm sure you do too, a bag of flowers. There's all kinds of scraps. And I knew I'd find some that would go right along with the bunny. Love those flowers. Love the aqua paint behind the napkin. It's so pretty. So there's the napkin that I used. And there is the ornament with the little bunny. Now I'm going to show you one of my favorite techniques, the Crackle method, and I'm going to give you lots of tips on this. So I painted it brown, and I took some off with a handy wipe. This is plain white school glue, and that's more than I really want. But keep in mind, if you didn't know this already and you never tried it, the more thicker the glue is, the bigger the crackle. So I am going to remove some of it. Now, here's one of my tips. I always give this about a minute or so before I put the paint on top. Now I'm going to take this beautiful pink, it's called Ballet Slipper, and I'm going to put it right on top of the glue. And the glue is still wet. I'm going to put the paint on in one direction again, like I did the glue from top to bottom. Now, that paint is dark brown because that's actually going to be the color of the crackle. Wait till you see. So I'm going to cover the whole egg, and again, I'm trying to do one stroke from top to bottom. I'm not letting this dry though. I'm picking up my heat tool, heat it. You can also use a hot hair dryer. That's what I originally did. And I'm going to just start to dry it. As I dry, look at the paint. It's starting to crackle. Crackle paint can take years and years and years to happen naturally, but we're doing a faux method, so it happens really, really quick. So you can see behind that pink paint, all of those crackles are the dark brown paint that we put on first. It's so vintage looking, and this is the kind of technique you can use with many of your decoupage and crafting projects. And you can put this off to dry because this will continue to crackle as it dries. So maybe put it off for a day or so before you add your napkin. So pretty. Oh, I love those two colors together. Now I want to pick out the perfect napkin, and I love this one with the bird and the florals. And I'm only going to need one square. And by the way, this particular design is by Podge. It's so beautiful, but it's perfect for this crackle. Now I want to make sure that the bird is going to fit, but then after looking at this some more, I decided I'm going to put a couple pieces on. I was only going to do the bird, but I decided that floor up on top with that little butterfly is going to fit if I just do a soft water tear. There's some Mod Podge. That's what's in this little container. And I'm going to start to adhere the napkin with the brush and the Mod Podge. Now I'm going to give you a little... I'm just going to apply this napkin with the Mod Podge. I'm using my brush. I am not going to use the iron-on method. I really strongly advise against it because if you put a hot iron on top of this, you're probably going to lose some of that crackle. We're not looking for perfect anyway. That napkin is going to go into the creases of the crackles, and you don't need to have it perfectly flat. You want it to look vintage. So I'm actually rubbing a little bit harder on this because I want the napkin to go into those little crackles. And I'm going to do the same thing with the top, which fits perfectly on that egg. I mean, look at that curve. It just fits right in there. Same thing, doing some Mod Podge on the top, because like I said before, Mod Podge does have sealant properties. You don't have to really put another sealant on top. As a matter of fact, I don't put sealant on top of any of my Crackle projects. I don't like how it looks on top. And of course, that's just my personal preference, okay? I just did the top part of the napkin, and I'm also doing a little bit of saran wrap on top or plastic wrap and rubbing it down really well. And I want to hold this up. Look at the crackle. You can see it right through the napkin. That's why we only use that top printed sheer ply. This definitely looks like it's been around a long time with all that crackle paint, and that crackle paint is not going to come out the same way 2 times. So every time you do it, it's going to be a little bit different. And remember, more glue, the thicker the crackle, less glue, the thinner the crackle. So I went around the edge with my finger sander to make sure I got all that extra napkin off. Now, another thing I'm doing is I'm actually going over the napkin a little bit around the edge. I'm just taking just a tiny bit off to give it more of a vintage look, and that's completely up to you. Color combinations are up to you, and you can do this any size. I'm just doing something small, which is where I think you should start, but you could go ahead and do it on bigger pieces of wood too. What do you think? I love the way this is coming out, but I want to make it look even more vintage. So I'm using some brown paint and again, my little blender, and I'm going to go all the way around the edge. Now, to give this more age, which is what I want to do, I really want to make it look vintage. I'm actually going to go over the egg a little bit, over the paint and over the napkin, just to make it look a little bit more old, a little more shabby chic. Love that. Look at the crackle, the butterfly, the bird. All right, how are we going to finish this off? I'm going to put a little bit of twine up there on top using hot glue. And remember, and then I went through my bag of floral scraps and I found a little rose that would be perfect. A little bit of hot glue, and I'm going to put that there on top. And there you have my finished egg using the Crackle method. This is one of my favorite methods. Practice it a couple of times. You're really going to love it, and start with something small. I did a lot of different techniques, and I gave you some great tips in this video. So let me ask you, which one of the eggs that I did was your favorite? Using the iron-on method, using the saran method, the soft water tears. What about all of the embellishments? And remember, you can layer napkins as well. If you're new to decoupage, I think you're going to find a lot of easy techniques and some great tips so that you can get started. And if you're a returning viewer and you've been doing decoupage, well, I hope you get some inspiration. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram, Decoupage D.I.Y with Joan-Marie Domino.